companies tend to build themselves or trap themselves in their own success story, which means that it's very, very difficult to kill your darlings. And it's very, very difficult to entertain the notions of alternatives to a primary cash cow, because your entire company is geared towards, you recruit the people who actually already work with the stuff, and you sell it to customers who love your stuff. And usually, if we sort of take a sort of sidestep into business intelligence, is that most companies, they're sending surveys to their customers, not to people who don't buy the services or products. So which means that they don't have, they only get people who are already positive to the products reviewing or is answering their questions. Which means that usually the customer says, yeah, we'll keep using your products, of course. But then something better comes along, and more the customer stock starts dropping. But the customers still are still positive to your products, which means that you're underestimating the rate of loss of your market.
Could we call it like a confirmation bias problem, that you're basically looking for people that do resonate with the
It's
company?
not a confirmation bias. It's just that they're not entertaining the notion of asking outside their peer group. It just doesn't happen. Why would you ask them? They're not interested in our products.
But I think this, what you asked before, has this something to do with size of the company? Maybe yes, but I think we also have examples of huge companies who are over and over again willing to invest and bet on R&D or on new ideas. Like Amazon has betted their whole life a couple of times. And so there are several, basically going from how they define themselves from a bookstore to, I don't know how you define Amazon today, which I find then the essence of actually understanding this, of building in this adaptability, or basically forcing yourself and putting a quite substantial idea into R&D in order to be adaptable.
I think very few companies actually invest in adaptability. Most of the sort of long-term successful companies, what they're good at is sticking to first principles.
What does that mean?
Speaking Elon Musk terms, I love it.
What is it?
Actually, Elon Musk is using old sort of sociological terms in this case, actually.
But he usually speak about first principles.
Yeah.
So what is the first principle? I'm the uneducated here.
You never compromise on the vision of your enterprise. And that's sort of, you have what's the English word for existensberättigande? The raison d'être, which is French, of course, but still an English
your purpose to exist.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Reason for existing.
Reason to exist.
Yeah, and so you can't have a successful company unless you're actually providing some value to a market through your services or products, and sort of that is what gives you your reason to exist, is that someone is actually willing to pay for what you're offering, and that has to be your first principle. Is that what are we actually offering the market? What is the value we're creating? And as long as you keep laser focused on that, not get sidetracked on, hey, we have to maximize our profits or we have to maximize shareholder value, because then you're forgetting the principle of your business.
And how do you put the principle of your business in relation to adaptability? So how far should you adapt to new things?
I think most successful companies today, they don't think about adaptability. They get caught up in their success and they go with it.
But if we speak about the most valuable companies in the world today, just look at the top 10 list of the most valuable companies. It's basically all of them tech companies.
Yeah.
It is the Facebook, the Amazon, the Google, the Microsofts. It's the Chinese companies, the Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, etc. Why do you think these tech companies are the most valuable companies of today?
Well, if you just look at market valuation, it's. I mean, they're big companies because they have a scalable offering. I mean, when you can do your business at scale, then of course you're going to be a big company.
But they need to reach that scale somehow. It's something they're doing to actually be able to scale to that extent.
Mostly they have been operating in a void. I mean, Alibaba and Amazon didn't have competitors, so they could expand quite freely.
But I think also, in some way, I like to think about this also, about that they are the first to move on a new macro life cycle.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like you have the mature, we have the agriculture.
Yeah, you have that's the blue ocean concept.
Yeah, so agricultural society moving into industrial society, and then a few companies less than 20 years ago start figuring out what is the next macro life cycle, data and AI first in a way, and then basically starts pouring money into that and starts learning by doing, and then it's a little bit like, you know, while we are now, as a normal company or as a legacy company, we are still stuck on the maturity of the old life cycle, and we need to now reboot to come into our pioneering stage. We have a huge problem now because the traditional companies, they are now in the pioneering state, 2016 to 20, not even out of the pioneering stage. They're fumbling around, and at the same time, with classical product lifecycle management, types views, these guys have already moved away.
We are veering quite far from AI.
Yeah, but it's good. But I think it's really good because in a way now we all know how the classical. Have you seen the PLCM curve, the product lifecycle cash flow curve? Do you know what I'm talking about? So typically you have an idea, and then you need to invest in this idea. So actually your cash flow is negative while you're investing, and then you start moving up, and then you have a chance. This is the old school Boston matrix. You go from your question mark, and then you move over to your star. The star, all of a sudden now you have expansive. You're investing heavily, but the growth rate has now taken off. You have exponential growth. I
just want to put a caveat here. I mean, BCG is basing their models on sort of the modern organization is using a template from the 1950s.
Yeah, so I'm aware of that. So we should not go too deep into this, but I'm more into the whole idea that from a life cycle point of view, they are now in their way on their growth stage, when most other companies is still in their sort of negative investment stage to set the foundation. Yeah. And I think the multipliers of how they are valued right now is because people between the lines are reading, this is my interpretation, that these guys have the foundation in place, and now it's a little bit like, where do we put this foundation to go next? We can use this foundation for the next market and the next market. I don't know. That's my interpretation.
But that's not innovation. That's just drift.
Or
scope creep.
Yeah, it's scope creep in one way, but also they are now then so much ahead on this new curve. So they are simply used cashing in on it.
So
how do you see it, Anders?
I'm just moving back a bit to the tech giants, and especially I think your PhD work, which is really interesting about adaptability and efficiency. What do you think are different from tech giants in terms of adaptability and efficiency compared to other companies? Because it's something they're doing.
Yeah, definitely.
That really is,
lack of legacy.
So new companies in general should be better than old companies?
Okay, they don't have sort of the war chests that old established companies have, but they don't have to contend with a lot of baggage that is sort of legacy. Because that really brings a lot of the old stolid companies down.
Yeah, so the old companies, when it comes to moving on in data and AI world, they have a technical deficit, and they have a data quality deficit.
Yeah, but
so they are on minus to some degree. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and they're definitely feeling the effects of the sunk cost. I mean, they've invested heavily in obsolete infrastructure.
That was relevant in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah, which is now just keeping them back.